it can be a really sexy song. It's a very deep and it's a dark song. It's beautiful. But our version of it was a little bit of spice in it. And I wanted to move a little bit to bring my attitude with my version of the song across that was still in keeping with what Leonard Cohen would have wanted, because he was a real advocate of the female voice.
That's Suzanne Savage, the singer we heard at the Duncairn Centre for Arts and Culture on day 3 of Lost in Belfast. And I'm John Lee.
And I'm Martin Nutty. And you're listening to the Irish Stew podcast. And we want to bring you on a trip to another aspect of Belfast, which is music. And Belfast is a UNESCO City of Music.
Yeah, so this comes at the end of a busy day 3 in Belfast. We started off the morning, as you might remember, in County Down, touring the Hinch Distillery and sipping their fine whiskies and gin. And then it was up to the Cathedral Quarter for our next interview with Michael Stewart and Caroline Wilson at the Common Market. And then to wrap up the Belfast homecoming, we took a significant side trip to a very special reception.
That was a real pleasure to go visit the American Consul General's residence. We met the consul, a gentleman by the name of James Applegate, and it was a real pleasure that both John and I had visiting a little bit of America and Belfast, along with many of the other folks that had attended Belfast homecoming in the Titanic Hotel Museum just the night before.
And we got another benefit from the Belfast homecoming in the form of Conla McCann, the organizer of the event itself, who hustled us from the Consul General's residence back into town to the Duncairn in time for the concert. And Duncairn, like a lot of former churches that have been converted to another use, perfect use in Arts Center, really great acoustics, great place to hear music, and we appreciate their mission, which in brief, inspire communities, create a shared space for the arts in North Belfast, and showcase the work of young emerging artists and the area's disadvantaged communities. In the former church itself, we heard Suzanne Savage, classical, jazz, traditional, vintage art song. You never know what you're going to hear next from Suzanne Savage. She comes from Belfast. She began playing the violin at age 8. In her teens, it was classical training by day, gigging with bands at night. She has a degree from Queen's University, studied and performed in Italy, toured with Riverdance, has been a soloist for the RTE Concert Orchestra. And we heard her at the Duncairn in a Belfast Music Society concert with the string ensemble, the Savage Five, actually -1 the night we were there. Suzanne, a musician, songwriter, singer with a voice as clear as a bell and a range spanning multiple musical genres. Suzanne, welcome to Irish Stew.
Hi, it's lovely to be here.
Great to see you again. Martin and I had such a great time at the concert. We'll get into that a little bit further, but let's start off with a bigger question here. Belfast was named the UNESCO City of Music, and that's a great title to earn. It's the first city in the island of Ireland to earn that title. What does music mean for Belfast? What does it represent for the Belfast of today and maybe the Belfast of tomorrow?
I think it represents a lot of things for a lot of people. I think it was fundamentally a really important thing that brought us all together, no matter who we were, what background we were, where we're from. It brings everyone together. I think it's a universal thing, particularly from the Belfast making its way out of conflict and in a post-conflict situation. It's been particularly really a magnet for everyone. And there's lots of great and exciting music coming out of Belfast. And yeah, in all the genres, that's the lovely thing. It's a small place geographically, but in terms of culture, I think it's massive and it punches above its weight. I think it's a really fun city, and I think music is definitely one of the cultural kind of mainstays, certainly, of Northern Ireland, I think. So it means a lot.
So talk to us a little bit, Suzanne, about your origin story. Your early memories. You grew up in Belfast. I'm guessing you may be old enough to remember the Troubles. Also, early music experiences. Was it a music household, or talk to us a little bit about that?
It's like that the famous press release. I was born at a young age. No, but my first musical experience actually was when I was in primary school. I was very lucky that when I was about 7, my little primary school, we were taken to see the Ulster Orchestra, which is a national orchestra in Northern Ireland. And it was an amazing thing. This is during the 80s when there's a good bit of trouble. And we went to the Ulster Hall, this beautiful Victorian concert hall. I've never seen the like of it in my life. I was in the balcony looking over this and they started to play. And this incredible sound welled up from the hall. And I'd never heard or seen anything like it. And I was just blown away. And I remember looking down on the first set of violins and going, that's what I want to do. So it's like one of the formative experiences for me as a musician was like, what is this? This is incredible. And the sound the orchestra made and really chatting to the kids. And so Belfast has always been a really musical town in terms of its education and outreach has been second to none. It's actually been really lovely because I was very much guided by that as a kid. We had free music lessons. And I think that for kids, it's so good for their confidence. Even if you're not going to be a musician, I think it's really important that kids have that opportunity. And I'm very lucky to say that I had. So anyway, moving on from that, I was doing the violin lessons from the age 8. And then I was leading my wee school orchestra. And I was like 10. Oh. It's really cute. And I was trying to get the tenor recorder, which is hilarious because if you know how big a tenor recorder is in a 10-year-old's hands, it's quite the feat. And so it was really sweet because the next school knew that I was wanting to join this big school on the Falls Road called St. Louise's. And I went there at the age 12 when things were kicking off and quite sheltered a young child. And then I went to kind of experience what Belfast really was in the 90s. But the music place that I went to in St. Louise's was fantastic. Mr. and Mrs. Fraley took me under the wing and they realised I loved music and they started getting me singing. And I didn't realise I could sing and I couldn't stop. They heard me singing from like 14. They're like, we knew you were in the orchestra. Let's get you doing other things. And yeah, and then singing actually took over. And yeah, it's lovely. And then just getting to know when you're getting a bit older, meeting other musicians, and then just starting to get into bands. And so I was doing classical music in school. And then outside school, I was doing lots of very different music, writing music with different people and meeting like-minded kids who were just up for making crazy sounds and starting gigging, really. So that was really fun.
Sounds like you were a classical musician by day and rebel by night.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of crossovers. People think, I don't know if anyone thinks that classical music is quite serene. It really isn't. Go and listen to The Rite of Spring and come back to me, you know?
I can see violin in a way leading into vocal. Violin can have a very vocal quality to it. Do you feel like the violin in your vocal cords at all?
Oh, it's right beside your head, so it's not too far away. It's actually quite tricky to sing and play at the same time, but I did write a song called The Violin Song. Funny enough. I think we played it in the Duncairn, actually, the guys. But usually I play the violin and I sing at the same time. So yeah, it is possible to do both, but it's not easy. I had to train myself. It's like, that's a little bit like singing and playing violin is a little bit like when you pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
But does just the experience of playing the violin, that sort of influence how you developed your voice?
In some ways, there were two separate things, actually, because it's lovely to have both. It's all music, but I know what you mean. But I think the voice started in its own trajectory and the violin was always doing its thing. So it's actually really nice. It feels like they're two different sides of a coin, if that makes any sense. So they're a little bit different.
I noticed from what I've gleaned from stalking you on the internet, you fetch up, that was me, yes. Yes, that you fetched up in Italy. So obviously you went to school on the Falls Road. So talk to me about the stops on the way to Italy and talk to us about going to Italy, the land of opera.
Again, such a beautiful place. And I had an amazing time and I met some really wonderful people. I was being a young professional, kind of like leading the band scene and like working and start to gig and do concerts. And I was always really interested in contemporary music as well. Like I'm interested in all kinds of music. I love music in general anyway. And everything from folk to really outdoor stuff. Like I just love it. It's a smorgasbord. There's just a greedy for music. That actually came about. I was doing gigs for this lovely lady called Mikey Smalls who had a company at the time. She got this very random email and she went, Sam, what is this? Would you like to be involved in that? And it was an audition to come out to Venice, an audition in a place called Fabrica. And Fabrica is Italian for factory. It was actually Luciano Benetton, you know, the United Colours of Benetton. They had this kind of artistic institute as part of the mechanism, what they were doing with their kind of altruistic, artistic. There was basically a villa that was offering these kind of scholarships to artists. And I was asked to come over and audition for a project with a composer that was the head of music in this place. And this was Fabric of Musica, which was a very small department of this kind of creative institute that's connected with Benetton. And so I said to Becky, I am definitely not washing my hair that night. I'm going to Venice and I'm going to do an audition. And it was amazing. So I was thinking to myself, listen, even if I don't get it, I get to go to Venice for the weekend and have just experienced this amazing place. I went over and I did the audition, and it was just me and the head of music in this tiny, tiny little medieval church that was on the grounds of this villa. And it was the most surreal experience because he was sitting like a foot away from me, and I play a violin and singing my songs to him. And he's literally in the closest tiny little room. And I went back there this summer for the 20th year reunion, and the church hasn't changed. And it's an incredible place, at least. But that was, I got the audition, and I went back and I stayed there, for about 2 years. Had an amazing time, met all these musicians from all over the world. So we did these projects together. And so the first project we did was people from Belfast, Istanbul and Jerusalem. We were doing this kind of collaborative work with an orchestra, and the composer's name was Andrea Molino. But that kind of started the process of really opening my mind to what else is out there, and particularly like connecting into Europe a little more, because Ireland, you can get a little bit over like an island, and the UK is a bit like that too. Whereas in a way, you go to mainland Europe and you can go a straight line for days, and it's just the cultures and the languages around you. So it was really exciting. When I finished my time there, I did an audition for Riverdance, and that was the one that kind of got me out of there and back to Ireland in a way. In fact, Riverdance, we did a tour, a couple of tours of Europe. And at the end of those kind of couple of years, I went to do the residency in the Gaiety, which is in Dublin. And that brought me back to Ireland, which was really nice, really fun. I really enjoyed working on Riverdance.
That's an incredible range right there of experiences. I also saw at some point along the way you with a Italian jazz organ trio.
Yeah, Matteo Adabo. Check him out. He's unreal. Yeah, this is the most random connection. Me and Matteo and the two Andreas. Andrea Berinatti, who's a beautiful cellist, but he's also an amazing jazz drummer. And Andrea Mucciarelli is the guitarist. The three of them are just unreal. Yeah, the guys, I met them very randomly through a drummer friend of mine in Dublin. He was getting married in Tuscany, and the band who were doing the gig at the wedding was Matteo. And they were just jazz hands, because my drummer friend is an amazing jazz musician, Dominic Mullen. He actually plays drums for Mary Coughlin band. Mary Coughlin, fantastic and Irish. She's just amazing jazz singer and all sorts of beautiful music she makes. Anyway, it's all jazz musicians in a barn in the middle of Tuscany at 2 a.m, jamming. And we just kind of all looked at each other and went, this is magic. We have to do this again. And it was me that said to the guys, do you want to come over? Let's do a tour. And so I brought them to Ireland, and we did a couple of dates around the country. And then which was really nice for me, I got to go over to Tuscany for 10 days and just eat and sing. And it was just like heaven. It was a nice cultural exchange.
I think all weddings should be held in Tuscany from my point of view. But I'm also thinking, just listening to you talking about your musical resume, that in some respects you are a nightmare for categorization. So that if you have somebody that's representing you,
Yeah,
that's
your agent's nightmare.
But how do you describe yourself musically, or how would you like your agent to describe you musically?
There are different Venn diagrams of people who will approach me for different projects, which I really love. I actually love the variety, but it does require to really change your skill set depending on what you're needed for. And I've been lucky enough to get called this year in particular. It just happens that way. You get into a groove and people know you for this thing, and they pick you again for that because they've had the experience of working with you in this particular thing. And so to describe that, for example, this year, I've done a lot of contemporary classical music, really beautiful music. Linda Buckley is a beautiful Irish composer. Oh, her music is so gorgeous, and it's contemporary, and it's now, and it's class. I worked with her this year, and just recently, last 2 weeks ago, I did a small kind of duet with an Italian composer based in Ireland called Caterina Sciambi. But anyway, the album is called Sea Salt and Turpentine, and it's a beautiful contemporary piece I got to play with the Finicchio ensemble 2 weeks ago. So that's worth checking out, for example. So that's one aspect of the work that I do. And then I'm a songwriter, so I love writing songs. So I try to say I'm a songwriter first, but like I do get work for as a vocalist on its own merit. And I think the agent might say I'm a confusing smorgasbord, but the main thing is that people want me to work, and I think that's or they want my voice in things, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. I think my agent would be going, no, Suzanne, you're not going to say yes to everything, okay? That's fine. I need to get another agent, or I need to get an agent. What do I say? I have my own agent. This is the problem.
You see yourself as a songwriter, but let's not discount the voice. I'm not good at talking about music like a professional music critic, but you have an amazing set of pipes, as we might say here in the U.S. Incredible range, subtlety, suppleness, modulation. I was kind of think of some of the influences that maybe I heard, or just little echoes I heard. Billie Holiday.
Oh yeah, I love that. That's a huge compliment, because I think I fell in love. I really fell hard for Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald, and
I was going to say Ella was going to be the next name I was going to mention, and I was going to say also the singer for a big band.
I love singing for big bands. I love singing it's really fun. Like swing for me is like home. I just feel like you could just stand there and be really expressive and just enjoy the grooves. I'm just huge ready to be an improviser. I really love singing jazz. I really love, and particularly that era of swing. I really love. A lot of time for, and I've been very lucky to work with a lot of really excellent jazz ensembles. It's one thing I really do love. So yeah, it's hard to say no to. Yeah, that feels like home for me in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would definitely say Imogen by that beautiful phrase and that kind of like the aesthetic and like just it's amazing music. So. Yeah, I'd say yes to that. Thank you.
I'm trying to remember a jazz musician. I think he was a saxophonist who said he listened to opera for the phrasing.
That makes sense. Yeah, because a lot of the opera stuff is about that wide sweeping phrase and where it goes and the expanse of it. Yeah. It's just such a deeply musical thing. I think we're all related, and you can hear that in maybe you can hear opera Coltrane. There's a lot of music is ever really disconnected from the other in a lot of ways. Maybe I'm wrong. To me, maybe that's fine.
So talk to us about venues in Belfast. Obviously, we saw you at the Duncairn Centre, which is this kind of amazing venue, a church, and it struck me that the acoustics in that venue were pretty amazing. Tell me about favourite venues besides Duncairn. Well, let's chalk that one up as being a good one. And we had a lovely evening listening to you and the Savage 4 that evening, I believe.
We have to clear up that controversy. We were promised a Savage 5.
Savage 5. Oh, got laughed up. No, Rachel couldn't make it because she got sick, but also her two parents at the same time got sick. So we had to make the call, and actually we rearranged the music. Actually, Wednesday when the guys arrived, there was 2 of my songs. We immediately rearranged 2 new songs that the guys hadn't heard before, and we performed them on the Friday. So they landed on the Wednesday, we rehearsed it, and boom, done. That's why when we're together in the same room, it's that quick. I love working with these guys. It's just, I love it because to me, it's alchemy. It's really easy and fun and intense. And then you could just enjoy making music together. So it's sad that Rachel couldn't make it. And we didn't know, we were just, listen, it's interesting when you have different sizes of ensemble and that kind of stuff. So because it's original music, you can be a little bit maybe more malleable than you would with something this has to be a trio or this has to be a quartet. So I think going on, we'll probably call ourselves the Savage Ensemble so that we can be a bit more flexible about how many members we're going to use,
And I interrupted Martin's question about venues in Belfast.
See, the thing with me is I've been living in Dublin, the southern capitals, for so many years that I am actually more familiar with venues in the south than I am with venues in Belfast. But I've always wanted to play Duncairn because Duncairn is such a beautiful community venue. And the thing is, I grew up around the corner from the Duncairn. So seeing that being reopened, it was just an old desolate church for a long, long, long time, sitting in an area that really wanted to have some beautiful cultural stuff going on and a really lovely art centre. It was the perfect match to me. My heart really soared when I saw that happening. And Ray and the gang involved in that are really community based and they bring lots of great art. And so I really wanted to book that venue with Belfast Music Society at the time. So Bethany asked us over. So she's Belfast Music Society, and said, let's do the Duncairn, like, let's do it. And yeah, I think the next time, however, I would play in the Harding Room at Queen's, because it's slightly smaller, but it's gorgeous. It's got the stained glass windows as well, but it's a little bit more intimate, and you're also coming into other part of history, of the kind of student history, the university history of Belfast. It's a very particular atmosphere as well.
Is that where we were the second night, Martin?
I think so. We went to see Philip Moyle's The Sea of Moyle, I believe it was called.
Yeah. Amazing. We should have seen it. I had to drive various musicians in my tiny car.
So speaking of herding cats, I'll call it the slight oddity of a quintet or ensemble or quartet, as it was that night in Duncairn, of singing in front of strings. When the whole group is together, you obviously have a violin, a viola, a cellist, a double bass. There is no drums, there is no woodwinds, there is nothing else. So talk about the challenges of singing in front of strings, because I've never come across anything quite like that before.
Yeah, it is different challenges. And I guess being a string player myself, you tie into the training a little bit. It does help, because it's a lot more fluid than when you're working with a rhythm section. You have the bass and the drums, and that kind of just drives your tempo the whole time. Whereas when you're working with a string ensemble, it's a lot more fluid, and you have to feel each other a different kind of way. Mind you, having said that, when you have a double bass in that quartet, it's an alternative string quartet. So you're getting the lower sound with the double bass, whereas your normal string quartet is cello, viola, 2 violins. So it's slightly higher set in some ways. So having the double bass there does almost act like a rhythm section. So the instinct of a string quartet is to tie together a little bit more loosely than with a rhythm section. So it's a little bit different. We do really feel each other a little bit more. It's just a different way of listening, if that makes sense. A lot of it's me and Hugo, the cellist. Hugo Smith is actually, he arranges, we're like good cop, bad cop. He, like, the two of us get together, we write together. Some of these are my solo things, and some of us are stuff that me and Hugo have written together. And he goes and he arranges, and he has all these ideas. And he comes back, and I make the bad cop, like, lop off something, go, no, let's do this. No. So when it comes to us actually being in an ensemble, we have to really feel out that space in terms of our function is all different. We have to really listen to each other individually. It's a challenge, because if I'm singing full steam ahead, and Alwyn, our first violin, is full steam ahead as well, rhythmically we can disconnect. We have to really tie into each other, even if we are in the same register as each other, and vice versa. So it's like we've all put the ego behind and be an ensemble. That's the thing about the voice with the strings. It's not just me out front, so to speak. I think we have to really be sensitive to each other. But when am I going out front? When am I just a colour? And when am I blending? And when am I stepping out? So we have to really be very musical when we're working together.
You mentioned Hugo Smith, who I think has been in your life for about 20 years. Talk to me. I know it must be very distressing for him.
He's been shorter prison sentences.
We'll get him on next and find out what's really going on.
Get all the dirt. Get the tea from Hugo.
And Hugo's from New Zealand, as I understand it. So how exactly did you guys cross paths? And talk to me about that collab.
We met in Italy. It was my first week. I was feeling really overwhelmed by being in this villa, like plonked in this beautiful, spectacular room with these it was just, for me, coming from Belfast and just feeling a little bit small and vulnerable, and being in this incredible, beautiful place. And I'm sitting there trying to write music going, this is actually a bit overwhelming. And Hugo walks in, and he's a cellist. And we were introduced, and he's like, do you want to write music together? And I was like, I've never written music for voice and cello. What the hell? Oh my gosh, as soon as we sat down, stuff happened. And I don't know why. But he is extremely easy to work with. He's so up for it. And he is indefatigable. Is that the word? There's no stopping him. He's so many ideas, and so do I. So the two of us getting together, we went the first week. And it was a nice moment where we realised, oh, everything's going to be okay. And I think Hugo was feeling the same. He's about 5 or 6 years younger than me, so he was quite young when he was there. And we just ended up hanging out. And yeah, we just hit it off as pals. And So yeah, we found it very easy to write music, and we're still writing music together, which is crazy. Even though our lives have taken us in very different places, we still find time to make music together, which is, I'm very lucky. Yeah, I think he's just amazing. Very blessed to have his friendship, and also his genius is part of my life.
Well, Suzanne, we've been talking a lot about music. Let's take a moment to hear some music. We saw the Savage 5-1 at the Duncairn, and we didn't feel cheated at all, though. We didn't feel cheated. We didn't ask for our money back. Really impressive, even within the context of this group, a tremendous amount of range in the music you presented and performed. Let's take a listen to one of the pieces we heard, I Still Love You.
This ill wind blows my way, regardless of what I do. All the good words caught and frayed in me is so much of you, so much of you.
I actually wrote that in Italy. Ages ago when it's just one of those things I thought, because I wrote it in guitar, and it's all bar chords. It's all like bar chord shapes. And I was really hung up on this double bass player. And it was nothing to do with the person that I should have been writing the song about. It came from an emotional place, first of all, but it wasn't quite quantifiable as to what I'm actually saying. But to me, it made sense. Like, I was in a troubled relationship at the time. To be honest, everything was moving on except me. So I wanted to just express that emotion. I was becoming something else, to be honest, at the time. And sometimes, as I say, what you write isn't necessarily exactly what's going on. It's an amalgamation of becomes a story. And that's where they came from. And I was really influenced by like those kind of late night kind of jazz tunes, those beautiful standards that I grew up on from the age of 21, the whole Ella, that dark Julie London kind of Crimey River kind of vibe was in my mind when I was writing it. So hopefully not in a bad way came across.
When we met briefly after the concert, I mentioned how much I enjoyed hearing Autumn Leaves.
Yay, chill.
Yeah, I'll be the jazz nerd now. Do you know the Cannonball Adderley version of that song?
Oh, it's great. It's so good.
Yeah, the greatest intro and outro. I listened to just that part. Suzanne, we talk about music in kind of vocal range and different formats and how the collaborative aspects of it, which I'm very fascinated by. But beyond the sort of pure music, you're a performer too. And I would say you can really sell a song.
I'm a big ham.
And there you go. What part does the kind of, let's just say, choreography of what you're doing? You're not dancing around the stage, but you're moving to the music. How does that help you tell the story of the song?
It depends on the song. If I was singing with a big band, for example, like I wouldn't be staying still. But you don't want to have so much movement that you're distracting away from the song and the message of the song. Like when I was working recently with the RT Concert Orchestra, we did their arrangement of Leonard Cohen's songs. And beautiful concert. The original producer, that was my good friend Brian Connor, and he asked me to jump on board, and I was like, "What?" And he knows my voice, and he calls me singing everything, really different kind of stuff. But one of the songs that I absolutely adored singing was "Dance Me to the End of Love," and in that version, like I've been salsa dancing for about 10 years. I'm not saying I'm any good, but that whole kind of the movement and the shimmying, a little bit of movement, like it can be a really sexy song. It's a very deep and it's dark song. It's beautiful. But our version of it was a little bit of spice in it. And I wanted to move a little bit to bring my attitude of my version of the song across that was still in keeping with what Leonard Cohen would have wanted, because he was a real advocate of the female voice and working with Jennifer Warner and all these wonderful female artists that he had in his life. And the backing vocalist was a major part of his stage presence as well. So I was tapping into that. I was wearing a navy suit, a velvet suit, tapping into the women were always wearing the suits and he was wearing the suit and everyone's well dressed with Leonard Cohen. Little things that tap into the performance aspect of that, which kind of hopefully bring across the story. So movement, I think, is important. Having said that, it really depends on the piece that you're bringing across. I think for certain classical pieces, when it's very meditative, you want to be still and just be simple about how you express the words or the sound for that, for example. So the real contrast depends.
And I keep finding things of you online. I go, there's another chapter, there's another dimension. But I came across a Bloomsday performance where you're in period costume, each singing like this period song, which...
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
just a song at one moment when the night's over and the flickering shadows softly come and go. It's a beautiful song. Though the night be weary, shaggy doing. Isn't it gorgeous? It's such a pretty song. Yeah, that's. I love that gig. I've been doing that 4 or 5 years now with the arena at Jim's House. They are fantastic, beautiful, like a museum house dedicated to James Joyce. And every year we have Bloomsday. And guess what time the gig starts at? When the book starts in Ulysses, 8 a.m. So we're there at 7, setting up, making sure the voices warm up. Oh my God. But we're all dressed up as well. We're dressed up like 1910, and it's amazing. I love that. It's a really nice, that's a lovely gig to be part of. I get to really feel like a Dubliner, proper dub.
You're speaking to one right here.
I'm still recovering, though, you know. Let me go back and ask a more mundane question, as I'm the former banker in the group. But talk to me about balancing economic goals and musical goals, because we live in a world where you've got Beyoncé's and Taylor Swift's at one end of the bell curve, and then there's this big long tail where most normal humans, or even extraordinarily talented humans like you, occupy. But it could be very simple that you could say, okay, I'm just going to focus on this one genre and I'm just going to push in that. But it strikes me that just having observed you perform and obviously working through your catalog of music, that you are more interested in making great music than necessarily fattening your bank account to the nth degree. So talk to me about that balancing thing.
I guess it's the volume of work. I've been lucky enough to be asked to do a lot of different things by a lot of different people, which I love. But the thing is, I might get bored doing the one thing. It depends on what the one thing was. If I had the opportunities to do more of my solo music, then I would. So it's really about, I am on a small island, essentially. It is because I don't have management. I don't have an agent. It's up to me to promote myself. So that's another part of the business, which is, for me, that's harder to maintain because I do a lot. So because I actually am performing a lot, and I teach voice, a little violin, and I'm also, like, at the moment, trying to write another album and maybe look at doing a PhD on, like, performance music. Anyway, that's another discussion. But in terms of balancing it is hard because I have to make sure I'm making enough space to breathe and to make enough space to be able to plan that next year ahead. It would be really nice to work as part of a team as opposed to me. That's the hard bit, is when you do it all on your own. And you have to when you're in a demographic that's a little bit smaller. Like, I think if I was working in America or something, there'd be more, perhaps because of the size of the place, there'd be more maybe opportunity. But then maybe, I don't know. I've done a bit of work in America, but not so much. So it comes back to just so far okay. And it's hard to kill a bad thing, Martin, but I think they've tried.
We talked to a lot of artists on Irish Stew, and I would describe them as working artists. Bono hasn't returned our calls. We talked to artists who piece together a successful life with several different revenue streams. They're gigging, they're writing, they're teaching. In terms of theater, they're acting, they're producing small plays. So I guess there's only room for one Taylor Swift in the world, but there's still a lot of ways to be successful in your artistic life.
Oh, I'm going to revisit that one. You know,
you're talking about scheduling everything out. Have you ever forgotten to go to a gig?
No, thank God. But don't say that out loud. Do you know what? That is the worst call. That is the dream that every musician probably has.
Yeah.
I think all of us have a version of this anxiety dream when you kind of, you go to sit, you wait in your dream, you're at the venue and you can't get on the stage, or you're wearing the wrong thing and you got 3 minutes to get up there and perform, or the gig is right now and you don't know the words. I think I had a river dance version of it once, and I thought the dream was, and I had this a few times until like years after I'd done the gig. I had a dream that river dance was for some reason being done in like local parish hall, and I was late. I was running down to get, and I could see everyone starting. I was putting on the first coach, and I could see them all dancing out in the front.
Well, we want to get you over to the States. I think you'd find a very receptive audience here in New York, a lot of different venues. That'll be our future project.
We're getting to that stage of the episode where we have to bring in our friend Seamus Plug into the room.
Yeah.
And so this is your opportunity to plug something that you are passionate about and you'd like our listeners to hear about.
I love to let people know about this wonderful initiative that's in Belfast called the People's Kitchen. And this is a brainchild of a good friend of mine, Damien McNerney. I met him at gigs in the north. Lovely musician himself, but he's really dedicated to help Northern Ireland. And he's got together with lots of musicians and they've made an album called The Kindness of Strangers. And there's lots of beautiful songwriters involved in that project. So I think that is an album I'd love to let people know about. I think it's well worth looking at that because I didn't make the cut because I didn't have time to send in a song to be part of the album. So I'm definitely going to be part of the second album. They had a little launch night for it there last Thursday in the Duncairn, and it's real grassroots. He goes out with his colleagues and it's like food every week for homeless in Belfast and the surrounding areas. And it's a really worthwhile initiative. And he's a wonderful guy. And I think everything that these guys do is fantastic. So I can't recommend that enough.
Great, Suzanne. We'll leave links in our show notes and amplify on social media. Sounds like an extremely worthwhile cause. Previously, we talked about Leonard Cohen, and we're going to end on the Leonard Cohen song, Dance Me to the End of Love, and that RTE broadcast of you with that tremendous orchestra.
Dance me to your beauty with a burning violin. Dance me through the panic till I'm gathered safely in. Lift me like an olive branch, be my homeward dove, and dance me to the end of love. Yeah, dance me to the end of love.
Beautiful. What a treat. Thank you so much.
Great to hear, Suzanne, in such a great venue like Duncairn Centre. And there's one phrase, which is not Irish at all, that really applies to Suzanne, is joie de vivre. She has an absolute adoration for music. She's totally agnostic. It doesn't have to be classical. It doesn't have to be jazz. As a matter of fact, she's comfortable bending the genre and experimenting, and that's where great music comes from, and she is an extraordinarily talented woman.
A lot of fun to talk to with, really infectious, and look forward to hearing more from her. Actually, we're going to be in a very interesting piece of architecture next week for our episode, the Crumlin Road Jail, the last Victorian-era prison relic in Northern Ireland, now being put to much better use as the home of the Belfast Distillery Company, reviving the classic old McConnell's whiskey in what's becoming a major hospitality and tourist attraction. That's going to be next week. And actually, speaking of tourists, let's remember to thank the support of Tourism Ireland for making our Lost in Belfast series possible.
Irish Stew is produced by John Lee, Martin Nutty, and Bill Schultz. Editing, mixing, and mastering by Bill Schultz. Music on Irish Stew was composed and performed by Rosa Nutty, with Donald Bowens on drums, Cathal O'Riordan on bass and synthesizer. For more on Rosa Nutty's music, please visit rosanutty.com.